We're going to move on to our next section, Forbidden Books of the Bible.
Woohoo.
This week we're focusing on the Book of Enoch, specifically chapters 12 through 24. Christina, do you want to pop off about 12 through 24?
Man, there's so much in it, and it's actually 13 through 24.
That's right, because we did 1 through 12.
It's
You're
all
right.
good.
You're right.
Yeah, do you have any thoughts you want to share first? You want me to?
I think you were just reading this before we started, so why don't you pop off and then I'll jump in.
Cool. Well, I'll just do a little bit of a recap, and I'll try not to go too overly in depth. You literally could
You could spend hours.
Spend a couple hours on some
interesting.
of these sections, yeah. Especially connecting them to other biblical passages and thoughts and rabbit trails. Yeah, very fun. Okay, so just a recap from last week. Last week we covered chapters 1 through 12. In the first 5 chapters, the focus was on how all of creation has kept to its rightful order, like the stars and the moon and things like that, and that the righteous on the earth will live long lives filled with peace and joy, but the wicked will be punished. Mm-hmm. And then this is contrasted in chapters 6 through 9, where a group of watchers look down from heaven to earth and decide to leave their rightful place. And a group of 200 watchers descend to earth to marry human women, and they have children with these women who are called giants, or described as giants. The watchers also teach mankind how to make weapons, do astrology, and like enchantments and magic. And they even begin to like cannibalize and eat men and drink their blood. So chapters 9 through 11, the angels in heaven hear the cries of men on earth like, help, things have gotten bad. And God instructs the angels to tell Noah about this great flood that's coming, and that all who are on earth will be destroyed, including the evil watchers and their giant children.
Yeah.
That the earth will be cleansed of all wickedness, but the righteous will survive the flood. And then we ended off with chapter 12, and it was talking about how Enoch is called upon by the watchers to declare judgment upon the bad watchers.
Mm-hmm. He was a scribe to copy down the Lord's judgment for the watchers and then take it to the watchers and tell them what was going to happen to them.
Exactly. Yeah. So we'll just pop into, I'll kind of just go through. Some of these chapters are really long and others are quite short. So if you just want to pop in with thoughts you have.
For sure.
Cool. Yeah. So in chapter 13, Enoch is sent to one of the watchers who has rebelled against God, and he tells them, like, you're going to have no peace, that a sentence has gone forth against you, that you will be bound forever because of the unrighteousness that you have taught to mankind and the sin you've shown them. And we know what this severe sentence is because in chapter 10, God says to one of the other angels, like, bind up Azazel, throw him into the desert and bury him until the day of judgment, when he'll be cast into the fire. And I find this interesting that Azazel is bound because he, along with the other watchers before they came to earth, they bound themselves by a curse to like promise.
Yeah,
hey,
with an oath.
Like as with an oath that they're like, we will bind ourselves to this oath that we will, pretty much disobey God and we're all going to do it together. Mm-hmm. And then God's like, well, you're going to be bound in the desert.
By physical ties.
Yeah, by physical bounds.
Buried in the desert.
Until the day of great judgment when you will be cast into the fire.
That's cool.
Probably shouldn't bind yourself by oaths and curses unless you're wanting to reap that.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting comparing this, like you're going to be bound and cast in the fire, to in Matthew 25, Jesus is speaking of the unrighteous, about the wicked, and he says, and God will also say to those on the left hand, depart from me, you cursed, into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. So Jesus is talking there about this fire that's prepared for the devil and his angels. And in Enoch, Enoch's told, like, Azazel, you're going to be cast into the fire.
That's a cool comparison.
Yeah. Also in Revelation 20, it says that the devil who had deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire. as well as in Matthew 13, it says, the Son of Man will send his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all who cause sin and all who are lawbreakers, and they will throw them into the fiery furnace.
Wow.
So lots of imagery throughout the Bible and in Enoch about how the righteous will be preserved and the wicked will
be bound and thrown into the fire.
Yeah. Something you don't really want.
Yeah. It's cool how that reinforces it, though.
Yeah.
Okay, so he goes to the watchers, declares what's going to happen to them, what the Lord has said. And then later on, after he declares this, the watchers are struck with fear and trembling. And they had Enoch write a petition on their behalf, which plays into him being a scribe,
Yes.
a righteous scribe. So he writes a petition, or they petition him to write a petition on their behalf because of the judgment of their sins, and they want that judgment to be lessened.
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting because it says that like the watchers like tried to like speak to God directly, but they were so ashamed because of their sin that they couldn't even like talk to God. And so they're like, hey, Enoch, you're righteous, so you can still talk to God.
Crazy.
So Enoch writes down their petition, and it's interesting because he goes off as he sits down at the waters of Dan in the land of Dan, south of Mount Hermon, and he reads the petition until he falls asleep. So either this was a really long petition or it was very boring or a little bit of both. But I found it interesting because in the context of where it's trying to tell us they are geographically, it seems that the watchers are at Mount Hermon, which is where they descended from.
Yeah.
So it's like they're trying to get back up to God. And so Enoch leaves them and he goes to the land of Dan, which is actually like the base of Mount Hermon, where the snow and rains will melt off of Mount Hermon and feed these streams leading into the land of Dan. And in the ancient world, from many different religions, this area of the land of Dan, the base of Mount Hermon, was viewed as like a thin space spiritually between heaven and earth. And there's lots of different ancient sites that they've discovered built there that were altars or temples to different gods or religions, which is quite fascinating. So where this is all kind of taking place later on. And this is also where it's believed that the Mount of Transfiguration is.
Wow.
Many theologians believe that Mount Hermon was the mountain that Jesus went to where he was transfigured and revealed to his disciples, as well as the area where he declared the gates of hell will not prevail against his church. Many scholars think that it kind of happened in this land of Dan, Mount Hermon area.
Super cool.
Quite fascinating.
I wonder if it's like the atmosphere of the earth, you know, how it gets degraded the more pollution that's near it. I wonder if it's because there's so much spiritual stuff going on up and down through Mount Hermon that the spiritual atmosphere became a little bit thinner.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just a random thought.
Yeah.
But
or just a
be.
lot of different religions and people like trying to, you know, all in one place connect with their gods, you know. So quite fascinating.
Nice.
So then Enoch wakes up from him falling asleep reading this petition. And while he was asleep, he had these wild visions. And so he goes to the watchers to tell them about these visions. And the watchers have now moved to a space in the book. It says between Mount Lebanon and Mount Sinai, S-E-N-I-R, Sinai. Which is also another word for Mount Hermon. Sinai is also used in the Bible. And in between these two mountain ranges in real life is an area called the Bekaa Valley. And there's the ruins of an ancient city in this area. It's a megalithic site called Baalbek. And megalithic means it's made out of massive stones, kind of like the Great Pyramids. And there's these sites all throughout the world where archaeologists have a hard time explaining how people from 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 years ago were able to move these massive stones to build these cities.
Like Stonehenge.
Kind of like Stonehenge. Like there's so many theories of how did they get these stones, which came from rock quarries hundreds of miles away, to this middle of this field in England. So yeah, in this area in between the Lebanon mountain range and Mount Hermon is an ancient site called Baalbek Valley. And so that is where Enoch went to talk to the Watchers. So some surmise that perhaps the Watchers kind of built this area. It was one of their places they lived. Who knows? So that's just kind of all out there, a little mild conspiracy. But I thought that was interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
And he goes back to the Watchers because of his dream, and he reprimands the Watchers who fell. We're talking specifically about the Watchers on earth.
Yep, the 200 who left heaven.
Yes. And he told them the dream. He was told in the dream he had to go back to the Watchers and reprimand them. So chapter 14, Enoch tells the Watchers on earth that they will not be spared. And then he describes his vision of the throne room of God, which he went into in his dream. And this is said, this is a cool thing that Tim, the guy who wrote this commentary on Enoch, it said that this is said to have authenticated his story to the Watchers because they would already know what the throne room looked like. So he's going back to them, telling them, no, your request has been denied. Not only that, I'm going to further describe the judgments, and then I'm going to prove to you that I was up there because I'm describing what the throne room was like to you, which is, I think it's a really poignant point to make. It's just like, hey, I was there.
Fascinating, yes.
I know what you guys saw, and this is what's going to happen to you.
Very cool. Yeah, and so Enoch describes the Watchers. First of all, he's like, hey, your petition was not granted. You will be judged. You knew what you were doing was wrong, and you're going to reap the consequences of it. And he has a visionary encounter that's much like John in the Book of Revelation, where he's not actually in heaven per se, but he's seen what things look like up there. And it's fascinating because there's so much language, it's quite detailed, that is so like prophecies in Revelation or Ezekiel. Enoch talks about, being brought up to heaven, and he sees walls built of crystal and floors made of crystal and glass. And there's lightnings and thunderings, and there's cherubim surrounding the throne. And and that fear comes upon him and he falls on his face, which we see many times throughout Scripture whenever people are either have a heavenly encounter or see an angel.
Right. And it also has a description of the throne room that's very similar to the one in Daniel. It talks about, in Daniel, it talks about the thousands of people or angels standing before the throne and ministering to the Lord. And it's almost verbatim in Enoch, talking about the multitudes before the throne ministering to the Lord, which is a really cool kind of thing to find out.
Yes, it's quite fascinating. And it's interesting as we go through all these chapters, Enoch will be like, I'm in a vision and I saw this. And then in the vision, I fell asleep. And then it's like Inception.
It's Inception, very much so.
It's like a vision within a vision instead of a dream within a dream.
French horn blaring at certain points, just like an Inception.
And his language is very similar to like John in Revelation, Ezekiel, and Daniel, where he describes things as it's like this, and it's like flames of fire. And it's because it's like he can't quite, he even says, I cannot describe to you its splendor and its extent. So it's kind of quite beyond human understanding. But I liked the part where he's talking about he's brought into the throne room, and he said the floor is of fire, and around it are lightnings and thunderings, and he sees a lofty throne, and there's wheels, burning wheels under the throne, and cherubim surrounding it. So we're kind of getting pictures of Ezekiel. It talked about a throne with many wheels. Revelation, there's cherubim surrounding the throne, and that streams of fire proceed from the throne, which is mentioned in the book of Daniel. Quite fascinating. And he sees what he calls the great glory, which is interpreted as likely being God. And it says that the Lord's clothing shone more brightly than the sun, and they were whiter than snow. Which is mentioned in both Daniel and the book of Revelation.
Very, very close to what they described in Daniel and Revelation. I think chapter 15 is really where I started to kind of love what was being said, though, just because the interesting ideas that were happening. Do you have anything else on 14, or do you
No,
want to move on?
I mean, we can go for an hour on
Yeah,
this.
probably
So I
good to
better
move
not.
on.
Yeah.
So chapter 15, this is where the Lord describes his punishments of the watchers and their children, the Nephilim. So I'm going to read a little bit of Enoch chapter 15, and then there's a couple footnotes I want to highlight here, and you just feel free to jump in.
Great.
So Enoch chapter 15, verse 8, and now the giants who were produced from the spirits and flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth, and on the earth shall be their dwelling. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies, because they are born from men, and from the holy watchers is their beginning and primal origin. They shall be they shall be evil spirits on earth, and the evil spirits shall they be called. So the footnote underneath says, the footnote underneath the chapter says, this is the origin of demons in Hebrew cosmology. In the New Testament, these evil spirits are called unclean spirits, and they are the same that are exorcised from the bodies of their human hosts by Jesus and his disciples. So in Enoch 15:11, it says, and the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth, and cause trouble. They take no food, but nevertheless hunger and thirst and cause offensive. And the footnote here says, the Nephilim, the unsanctioned hybrid offspring of the watchers, were cursed, so that after death their spirits would become restless wraiths wandering the earth. Though disembodied, these spirits remain tormented by fleshly desires, eternally seeking to possess human bodies to satisfy their unending hunger and thirst. So, Nephilim, when they die, they don't have a place to go.
Right. Nephilim being the children of watchers and human women.
And human women.
The giants.
So they became what we call demons.
Yeah. It's very interesting, and to have that perspective.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not opposed to that interpretation.
No.
And you can kind of see that a little bit through scripture if you look at through those lens. Yeah. It's kind of interesting earlier on in chapter 15, because God is talking about, he's making it very clear to the watchers, like what they did wrong. And he was talking about watchers, they are spirit. Therefore, spirits are in heaven with God. Whereas man, they are flesh, and flesh live on the earth. And that he's made it so that humans can, be married and have more children, because humans die off, whereas spirits live on forever. So he's explaining this conundrum kind of like, well, you've created this hybrid of like humans and eternal spirits. And so he's going to kill off these giants, these Nephilim. So their flesh will die, but their spirits will remain.
Right.
Yeah.
You cannot be like destroyed.
Yeah.
Eternal beings. And so I love this point that this could be the demons that try to inhabit people's bodies, possess them. And Tim even ties in their fleshly desires of unending hunger and thirst.
Yes.
Like they're trying to inhabit and possess human bodies so that they can exercise their demonic desires on earth for flesh and pleasures and thirst. It even says earlier in Enoch that they started to eat human beings. Nephilim started to eat human beings because they couldn't be satisfied.
Yeah.
And that's what demons try to do to humans, is try to use them and possess them in order to satisfy their own desires, but they can't be satisfied.
Yeah.
So it's another really cool comparison, I think. And
Fascinating.
And I'm not 100% sold that this is real.
Yeah.
But I think the idea is so, I don't know, it's so close to reality.
Yeah.
That it's really
this
interesting.
kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like it tracks with, I pulled up some other verses in the Bible. One being Jesus is talking and saying that, because people come to him, they're like, hey, what if like somebody gets married and their husband dies and they just keep getting married and, they got 7 husbands, when they are resurrected, who's going to be their husband? And Jesus is saying in the resurrection, spirits, your soul won't be married or given in marriage because you'll be like the angels in heaven. So he's talking to them as if they all know that the angels don't like get married.
Oh, interesting.
You know?
Yeah.
So that idea has to have come from somewhere. Unless this is, the first thing. And they seem to be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. They don't, it's not recorded that they're like, what? Angels don't have angel babies?
Yeah, so true.
Yeah. So I thought that was cool. And then as well as, the spirits of the dead Nephilim. We sound so insane talking about this.
For sure.
That's all right. We're not saying we believe all this.
No, we're not saying we believe it.
Yeah.
We're just throwing it out
there. We
there.
might believe it. Probably believe it. I don't know. But in Matthew 12, Jesus is giving a parable and he says, when an unclean spirit is cast out of a person, it passes through waterless places, seeking rest, but it finds none. And then it says, I will return to the place which I came from. And when it comes, it finds the house empty, swept, and put in order. And then it goes and brings with it 7 other spirits more evil than itself. And they enter and dwell there. And the state of the person is worse than the first.
Yeah.
So it just kind of ties into this that these unclean spirits will, they're always thirsting. They're always wanting a place to dwell.
Restless.
They're restless.
Seeking a human body to inhabit.
Yeah.
So crazy.
Yes.
So chapter 16, this one I don't have much on. It just says that Enoch tells the watchers and that the Lord declared that they will have no peace.
Yeah.
Basically continuing that theme of he rejected your proposal for less in judgment.
Yeah. And he clarifies, you have taught men and women evil things. They taught them astrology and enchantments, war.
Vanity.
Yeah. So it's you're going to have no peace because you taught them ways to not have peace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So chapter 17 and 18 kind of describe how Enoch is taken and shown to the ends of the earth, where there are heavenly hosts that are imprisoned because they, quote, transgressed the command of the Lord in their rising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's quite interesting because throughout, you see this throughout biblical scripture as well as Jewish cosmology writings, and all of the ancient world viewed the stars and planets and the heavens as all being spiritual beings. And so throughout these passages, they talk about, spiritual beings being like the stars and things like that. And he specifically mentions in this that he was taken to a place where there were beings who were like flaming fire, and when they wished, they could appear like men.
Crazy.
Very interesting. Yeah, so he's kind of brought through these areas, which it's. I'm going to read this passage. It reminds me of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it's very cool.
And the angels, righteous watchers, good angels, are taking Enoch around, and it says they took me to the living waters and the fire of the west, which receives the setting of the sun. And I came to a river of fire, in which a fire flows like water and goes into a great sea. And I saw great rivers and great darkness and a place where no man or flesh walks. And I saw mountains in the darkness of winter and the place where all the waters of the deep flow. So I'm this is just very mystical.
It's so cool.
Yeah. But it just reminds me of the journey, in Lord of the Rings. And we got some fiery Mount Doom, and we've got these swamp darkness places and things like that.
I would be interested to know if J.R.R. Tolkien read the Book of Enoch and it inspired some of his writing.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So chapter 19, Uriel, who is one of the heavenly watchers who's taking Enoch around, tells Enoch that this is where those watchers who have slept with women shall be imprisoned. He's talking about the lake of fire that you described. Mm-hmm. And the women who slept with them shall become sirens.
Yes.
I have no idea what that means.
Totally. I literally put, what do we do with this information?
I have no idea.
Yeah. So pretty much the angel Uriel is saying hey, the evil watchers, they're going to be imprisoned until the judgment day. There's this talk all throughout the book of Enoch of the great day of judgment when all will be judged. Yeah. And it's and side note, the women who married the watchers, their spirits have obviously been defiled and they will become sirens.
Sirens. Does that mean a physical siren, like a wailing, or does that mean a mermaid?
I know, evil mermaids. Yeah.
What the heck?
So I looked up in the ancient world, sirens were just viewed as more female demons or unclean spirits. Kind of the idea was that like they were specifically like the female version of that, and the rest were like male.
Wow.
I don't know. Kind of works. Okay. I don't know. But yeah, I just thought that was very strange. And that also leads to people believing, like, some people believe that these watchers came down and they just like
took women,
grabbed up 200 women and married them, which this is kind of leading to the idea of like, yeah, they decided to be in these marriages. Like they also sinned. The women did. Mm-hmm. And, you know, this was an intentional choice.
Yes.
Therefore, they're getting judged also.
In chapter 20, it continues to name the watchers that remain in heaven, and they give their job descriptions.
Yeah.
So like Uriel, Gabriel, a couple different ones.
Yeah, I thought this was really interesting. And this seems kind of like an odd interjection into the narrative. But as you continue on, as Enoch is toured through heaven and hell and earth, different angels explain to him what they're seeing, and they're all tied to their roles. Mm-hmm. So 7 angels are described that Uriel is over the world and Tartarus, which is kind of the idea of hell.
Yeah.
Raphael is over the spirits of men. Raguel is over the world of the luminaries, which is what the 3rd section of the Book of Enoch's about. The angel Michael is over the best of mankind and over chaos, which is an odd combination.
Yeah.
Sarguel is over sinful spirits. So Michael's over the good ones and Sarguel's over the bad ones. The angel Gabriel is over paradise, serpents, and cherubim. Another interesting one. And then Remiel is over those who rise or will be resurrected. Honestly,
I just love that this introduces you to so many more characters than you thought would be like archangels or heavenly watchers. It's just like, I don't know. It's so fascinating to me. It's like reading a good Lord of the Rings book. You're like, oh my God, look at all these huge archangels that are going to help form this story.
Right.
And they just kind of dropped them all in this one chapter.
Yes. Yeah. It's very fascinating, especially if we're looking at this book through the lens of like, it's not canonical or inspired at all. Yeah. It was likely written in like 300 to 100 AD. And it kind of is standing up against Greek mythology and Roman mythology, who also had their different gods and beings who had different roles. And it's kind of like, here's like the good ones. Yeah.
Yeah. It could be that this is where they got the idea from for like the Greek gods. It was like, this god is over this, or that god is over that. Yeah. That's very interesting.
Yeah. The study of ancient religions finds so many crossovers in kind of retelling of known biblical stories in different perspectives.
Absolutely. Yeah. So chapter 21, Enoch, and I love this chapter, by the way. It's so really crazy. Good. So Enoch is shown a place he describes as chaotic. And he's never used that word before this.
Horrible.
Yes, chaotic and horrible. So it says this place has no heaven above or earth below, that it has pillars of descending fire, and you can't see where it descends to. There are 7 stars bound together into a mountain of fire. So Uriel, the same heavenly watcher that was talking to Enoch earlier, tells Enoch that this is a prison for angels.
Right.
And the stars that are bound are heavenly beings that have transgressed the commandment of the Lord. We get that same thing that we got in, I can't remember which chapter it was. Oh, it was in chapter 17. They transgressed the commandment of the Lord.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And it's cool because it's like, oh, Uriel's here with him. And we were just told in chapter 4, he's the one who is over Tartarus, which was viewed in the ancient world as the waiting place for people who were going to be judged.
Totally.
And again, he's like, these 7 stars are bound together and judged. And the stars in the ancient world were viewed as spiritual beings or angels. And it's not saying there was only like 7 bad angels. 7 was also the number of completion, especially in Jewish cosmology. So he's kind of saying like the complete number of those who went against the Lord are going to be held in this place with great fire that he says is terrible to look on and is very fearful.
So crazy.
Yeah. And then Uriel's like, why are you afraid, Enoch? He's like, because this is a place of spectacle of pain. Yeah.
So chapter 22, Enoch is shown another high mountain in the west with hollow places where the souls of men are collected after they die to await judgment. Uriel, who's still with him, describes to Enoch how the voice he hears crying out from one of the hollow places is Abel.
Well, yeah. Fascinating. It's actually Raphael.
Sorry, Raphael.
That's right. Which was the angel who was over the souls of the dead.
Look at that. Look at you doing all this extra work. That's awesome.
But yeah, and so he's like, hears these voices crying out from this hollow in this mountain. And he's like, what is it? And Raphael's like, it is the voices of those just like Abel who are crying out pretty much for there to be justice and recompense on their behalf. And further on, Enoch's like, so what are the other three? Why are there four separate holding places?
Yeah, within the mountain.
Yeah, and Raphael explains that they are, these hollows are for four different kind of holding places for the souls until they're judged. And one is for the righteous souls. So that would have been like Abel, who was murdered without cause. He was a righteous person. The other place is for sinners who are judged in life. So people who were like, punished for their sins. Maybe they murdered somebody, they were put in prison. Then the victims of sinners, which that could be as well, maybe where the soul of Abel is crying out for justice. And then the unrighteous sinners. So unrepentant people who will be judged as well. And this all sounds a bit, mystical in like our modern day understanding of like, if you believe in Jesus, you are saved. And when you die, you go to heaven, or vice versa, hell. Whereas in the ancient world, in Jewish customs, and I believe even Judaism today doesn't really teach the idea of heaven and hell, but they believed you went to Sheol, like this waiting place.
Yes.
Where you might just be forever, or you might be, there might be a judgment at the end of days.
Yeah, so this is closer to a description of Sheol, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's really cool because it says that the righteous souls wait in rest, while the unrighteous souls wait in torment.
Right.
So even if you're waiting to go to hell, it's still a torment. And if you're waiting to go to heaven, it's rest.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And this is wild because it fully connects with what I find one of the oddest, parables that Jesus tells in the Bible. And that is the rich man and Lazarus, where there are two men it says, the time came when a beggar died and the angels carried him to Abraham's side, which was another name for like Sheol, like the good place where the dead go. And that there was a rich man who also died, and he was there as well. And they saw each other from far away, and they're asking for, hey, can you call out to Abraham and ask him to have pity on me? This rich man who knew he was wicked. And Abraham replies and said, remember that in your lifetime you received good things while Lazarus received bad things.
Yeah.
And now he's comforted here and you're in agony. And there's a great chasm set in between you where you can't go here and he can't go here. And the rich man's like, please, can you tell my family, like warn them of like what's to come? And Abraham's like, they have the scriptures. Let them listen to them. And if someone goes, they will, he's like, no, but if somebody from the dead goes, then they'll really know that it's true and they'll repent. And Abraham's like, they didn't listen to the scriptures. Why would they be convinced when somebody rises from the dead? Which
is interesting because the first thing that the watchers on earth did after Enoch told them what was going to happen to them is they petitioned.
Yes.
They called out to the Lord, or they told Enoch to call to the Lord. So there's something within all eternal and non-eternal beings that says petition to the Lord, even if it seems vain and not worth it and like it's going to have no effect. These souls are shouting out right now, crying out to the Lord on their own behalf
Right.
as to what's happening to them. And this is just a clear picture of that.
Right.
So I think that's a great comparison you made.
Especially prior to Jesus, because now I believe that when you die, you either go to one of two places, heaven or hell. Because Jesus says to the sinner on the cross, you know, you'll see me today in paradise.
Yeah.
But yeah, just another one of those, just like Jesus before, talking about like, don't you know the angels don't get married? And here he's talking as if everybody knows that everybody goes to this holding place where the good people are one side and the bad people are on the other, and they can't commingle.
Totally.
So another fascinating thing from Enoch that really gives a little bit of understanding to Jewish beliefs of the day that Jesus obviously believed in as well.
Yeah. So chapter 23, Enoch is taken further west and shown a fire that ran without resting. It definitely was westing. So Raguel, that's an interesting name of a watcher.
Yeah, and he's the angel who's over the luminaries, which is the stars and the sun.
Heck yeah. So one of the whole heavenly angels told Enoch the fire was to persecute all the luminaries of heaven. Again, luminaries being a reference to heavenly beings, probably the ones who transgressed against the Lord. And then chapter 4 is...
24.
24 is what could be another description of the abode of Yahweh. It is depicted as 7 mountains, with the largest being in the midst of the other 6 and having something resembling a throne on it, which has fragrant trees that surround it. Surround the throne, I mean.
Yes. Yeah, I thought this was so interesting because I'm talking about there being 7 mountains, but the one in the middle, and it's specifically called, even though it's in the middle, it's the 7th mountain, which leads to this idea of perfection or the best. That on top of it is a throne surrounded by trees, and that there's a specific tree, which Enoch said, I've never seen before. It had a wonderful fragrance, and its fruit was wonderful, and its leaves never withered. Like it was green year round. And he says, how beautiful is this tree? Which is interesting because this really ties into the idea of, in Genesis, the Garden of Eden, which was on a mountain. People don't always know that, but according to the passages, it talks about rivers flowing out of Eden, meaning that it is somewhere high up enough that something flow out of it. And we know that in the Garden of Eden, there was a tree that was different than the others, the tree of life. As well as in the book of Revelation 22, it talks about the New Jerusalem, the heavenly city, heaven coming to earth, that there's a tree that has wonderful fruit year round.
Very cool.
So just a little bit more connections.
I love that.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's chapters 13 through 24.
Yeah. So I hope you tracked a little bit with that.
If you guys want to read along with us, we'll be doing the next 12 chapters.
Yeah. We'll finish up the section that's the Book of the Watchers. And from there, I think things will be, I'm not going to say less complicated, but it'll just be a lot of stuff that, well, I don't know. We'll just be like, well, there's a bunch of stars and moons and things.
Yes, for sure. Cool.
Awesome.
Great job,
Do you have any final thoughts connected to that?
I love chapter 15 about the description of what could be demons is what the souls of the Nephilim.
Yeah.
I've always thought that was a cool idea.
Which in ancient Judaism was pretty much what they believed.
Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. You have any favorite parts?
I think it's just interesting. I'm not saying it's all real or true by any means. I understand why it was not, known enough to be considered in the Bible, especially since we don't really know who wrote it. But I do find different things that, especially that Jesus said, it's like, well, the angels don't marry. And like, spirits have to find a home, and just things that kind of tie into the Book of Enoch. And the Book of Enoch was definitively written before Jesus. Yeah. And so he kind of references and quotes stuff from it. So Jesus read Enoch, so I think we shouldn't be too afraid to either.
Yeah.
Cool.
I agree.